Hey there YouTubers, this is Off-Centered Potter. Hey, what's up? In Wichita, Kansas, and I'm doing a video for Sherry's students. I just recently met Sherry through YouTube, and I'm a school counselor and I do clay therapy a lot with students, and Sherry told me that she also uses clay with her students. And so I thought I would make this instructional video to demonstrate how a beginner might get started with pottery. So if you are not a beginner, then this video will be incredibly boring to you. But if you are just getting started, you might find this video to be useful. So let's get to the wheel. Okay, so to start centering, I'm going to get my hands nice and wet, get the clay wet, and I'm going to turn the wheel on to a fairly fast speed. I'm going to use my left hand, bracing it on my knee, pushing my palm, and just getting the clay started by just kind of smoothing out a bit. Okay? Just kind of smoothing that side, keeping my hands in the clay plenty wet. I'm going to take my top hand and I'm going to do a karate chop on the top. This part of my hand stays on the center top of the clay. Then I'm going to relax my hand over, grab my thumb with my other thumb, and I'm creating this little shell, sort of, that the clay is going to adhere to or make its home there. So I'm pushing down on the side, or I'm pushing on the side and I'm pushing down the top, and I'm forcing that clay into this little mold. And you see that clay that comes off? That always happens to me. It doesn't happen to everyone. It depends on how you center. But that's just clay that was off center. It was there was more on one side than the other, and so it came off in my hand. Now, I'm not really pushing as much as I am trying to hold my hand very steady and just kind of forcing the clay to go to my hand. And that's another mistake that we sometimes make when we're first learning how to throw, is we just kind of go with the clay. And you don't want to do that. You want to force the clay to go to you. So we're just forcing the clay to go into the shape of my hand. And it is also important sometimes to slowly take my hands off and slowly put them on. That's called revisiting. And we want to do that frequently during the centering process, but make sure that when you take your hands off the clay, you do so gently, and you gently put them back on. Because even the slightest nudge or motion can throw your clay off center. So we're keeping the clay plenty wet, and this is the part where you have to listen. You have to listen to the clay. Hello? You have to listen with your hands. Feel where the clay is off center. Feel where you feel the bumps. Keeping your hand in this position. Again, I can wrap my thumbs around if I'd like. Okay, and my clay is working its way into the center. Another thing I can do is I can do what's called coning. Once I get it close to the center, I can bring the clay up into a cone and push it back down again. The way I do that is I use this part of my hand, the side. I'm going to kind of undercut the clay, putting pressure down there and lifting it up. And some artists are very good at this, and I'm not as good, but I'm practicing. So I get it up into a cone. I keep doing this. And if you are going to cone, one of the things that you have to practice doing is, again, listen with your hands and make sure that you don't hold your hands in one spot too long, because this will just come right off in a big chunk. Okay, so I'm just pulling straight up, bringing that up into a cone, like this. Now once I get it up into a cone, I'm going to put pressure a little bit on the side, and more with this part of my hand, bracing my arms on the wheel, and I'm pushing straight down. And I want to avoid letting the clay go into a mushroom shape. I don't want that. I want the clay to stay straight up and down. So I have to make sure I put plenty of pressure on my side hand to keep it from becoming too much of a mushroom. Push down. Okay, now you can see I'm pretty much back into that same centering position. I'm putting pressure with the pinky on my left hand to get that bottom into center. Now I'm putting pressure on the middle fingers, now the top fingers, keeping the top hand steady. Okay, and I think that my clay, for the most part, is pretty centered. One of the things I like to do is use this tool, which is called a rib tool. At this stage, I just gently go in here and I trim some of that excess clay off. That's just kind of a preference. I don't know if it actually has much value. It's just kind of a preference to me, so I can tell better if the clay is centered. Now, when I'm first learning to center clay, the thing that I can do to test is I can look at my hands and say, can I put my hands on the clay and do my hands stay steady? Do they not wobble around anywhere? And as you can see, my hands are staying pretty much where they belong. I've got a little bit of a wobble here, but nothing too terrible. Okay, if I can do that, then I know that my clay is pretty centered. Another thing I can do is use a mirror, because sometimes you can see a lot more in a mirror than you can looking straight down on your clay. And I'm not using a mirror today because I'm videotaping, but usually I have a mirror that sits right here so I can see what's going on. So I'm going to just step back and look. That looks pretty good to me. So now we're ready to move on to the next step.